The first sign of trouble came on a quiet Tuesday morning. Captain James Miller was drinking his coffee in the International Space Defense Force control room when the alert flashed across his screen. At first, he thought it was a mistake. The deep space sensors were picking up multiple objects moving at impossible speeds, all heading straight for Earth. "Get me confirmation from all stations," he ordered, setting down his coffee cup. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. Around him, the control room burst into activity as operators contacted every space monitoring station on the planet. "Sir, confirmation from Europe Station," called out Robert, his senior technician. "They're seeing the same thing." One by one, more confirmations came in. Asia Station, America Station, and finally the Moon Base all reported the same readings. The objects were massive, each one bigger than anything humans had ever built in space. They moved with purpose, slowing down as they entered the solar system. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. These were ships. Miller picked up the red phone, the one that connected directly to Earth's Defense Council. "This is Captain Miller at ISDF Control. We have a code black situation." I repeat, code black. Within hours, every military base on Earth was on high alert. Fighter jets took to the skies, and space defense platforms powered up their weapons. But deep down, everyone knew these measures would mean little against visitors who could cross the galaxy. The alien ships took position around Earth's orbit, forming a perfect circle around the planet. They were beautiful in a terrifying way. Sleek silver vessels with glowing blue engines, each one displaying the same symbol, a star wrapped in a crown, the mark of the Galactic Empire. Inside the ISDF headquarters, Miller watched the main screen with Earth's top military leaders. General Williams of the United States, Marshal Lai of China, Colonel Parker of the European Union, and others from every major nation stood in tense silence, their usual rivalries forgotten in the face of this new threat. "They haven't made any aggressive moves," Miller reported, pointing to the tactical display. "But they've positioned themselves to cover every major population center on Earth. If they attack, there's no way we could stop them all." The room's tension grew as a new alert sounded. "Sir," called out Robert, his voice shaking slightly, "we're receiving a transmission. They want to broadcast to every screen on Earth." General Williams stepped forward. "Can they do that? Just take over our broadcasts." Before anyone could answer, every screen in the room flickered. The image that appeared showed a humanoid figure, but clearly not human. The alien had pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to glow from within. It wore a uniform covered in medals and insignia. "People of Earth," the alien spoke in perfect English, "I am Commander Rex of the Galactic Imperial Fleet. Your world has been chosen to join our empire. We bring order to chaos, civilization to the primitive, and unity to the divided. You have 72 hours to submit to imperial rule." The message repeated in every major language on Earth. As it played, Miller noticed something interesting. Despite their overwhelming show of force, the Imperial ships maintained a respectful distance from Earth's defense satellites. They could have easily destroyed them, but they didn't. "They're being careful," he said out loud, "like they're not entirely sure about us." Marshal Lai nodded slowly. "Or they know something we don't." In the hours that followed, Earth's leaders gathered in emergency sessions. The public reacted with a mix of fear and defiance. Some called for immediate surrender to save lives. Others demanded resistance at any cost. But in a secret facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, a group of scientists were about to reveal humanity's greatest secret, one that would change everything. As the first day of first contact drew to a close, Captain Miller stood at his command post, watching the Imperial ships glitter in Earth's orbit. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Humanity had faced threats before, but never like this. Yet somehow he felt a strange sense of hope. After all, humans had a habit of surprising everyone, including themselves. The real question was, What would Earth's leaders decide to do with the next 48 hours? Admiral Thomas Walker stood before the United Nations Emergency Council, his military uniform crisp despite the 36 sleepless hours since first contact. The room was packed with world leaders, their faces showing a mix of fear and determination. "The Empire's ships haven't moved," he reported, pointing to the large screen behind him. "But they've sent another message. They want to meet." The room erupted in whispers. President Clark of the United States stood up. "Meet where? And with whom?" "They've requested the International Space Station," Walker replied. "They say they'll send one representative. They want to speak with Earth's leaders face to face." A small shuttle departed from the largest Imperial ship 20 minutes later. It was smaller than their other vessels, but still impressive, gleaming like liquid metal in the sunlight. The space station's crew watched in awe as it smoothly docked with their station. Commander Rex stepped out alone. In person, he was tall, nearly 7 feet, with that same pale blue skin they'd seen in the broadcast. His uniform sparkled with strange metals unknown to Earth. Walker led the Earth's delegation. With him were 5 others: President Clark, Premier Joe, Dr. Stevens from the Science Council, General Williams, and Captain Miller, who had first spotted the Imperial ships. "Your station is primitive," Rex said, looking around. "But I sense potential here. The Empire has watched your kind for some time." "Then you know we're not as primitive as you might think," Walker replied carefully. Rex smiled, showing teeth that seemed too white and too perfect. "We know you've split the atom. You've sent primitive probes beyond your solar system. You've even started building small colonies on your moon and Mars." He paused. "But compared to the Empire, you are children playing with toys." He pulled out a small device, and a hologram appeared in the middle of the room. It showed thousands of worlds, all connected by glowing lines. "This is the Empire. 10,000 worlds. 1,000,000 years of civilization. Technology you couldn't even dream of. What exactly do you want from Earth?" President Clark asked. "Your world sits at a strategic position," Rex explained. 3 major trade routes could pass through your solar system. The Empire needs this location. We prefer willing subjects, but we will take what we need." Dr. Stevens stepped forward. "And if we refuse?" Rex's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Then we will demonstrate why no world has successfully resisted the Empire in over 10,000 years." He touched his device again, and the hologram changed. It showed a planet, much like Earth. Then a beam of light struck it from orbit. The entire continent below turned to glass. "This was the last world that refused us," Rex said quietly. "We preserve such examples as reminders." Walker noticed something interesting. Despite Rex's threats, he kept glancing at their technology, studying their tablets and computers, with too much interest for someone supposedly so advanced. "You have 48 hours remaining," Rex continued. "Choose wisely." He turned to leave but stopped. "Oh, and don't bother with your nuclear weapons. Our shields can handle much worse." After the Imperial shuttle departed, the Earth's delegation gathered in a secure room. Captain Miller was the first to speak. "Did anyone else notice? He seemed very interested in our equipment." Walker nodded. "And they're being careful. Too careful for someone with their supposed power." "They're afraid of something," General Williams said. "But what could possibly scare an empire of 10,000 worlds?" President Clark looked out the window at the Imperial ships glittering in orbit. "Maybe they know something we don't. Or maybe," she paused, "they suspect something about us that we need to understand ourselves." In the silence that followed, Walker made a decision. It was time to visit the facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. If humanity had any chance of surviving this, they needed every advantage they could get. And perhaps their greatest advantage was something the Empire had already guessed at: humanity's unique ability to surprise everyone, including themselves. Deep within the Rocky Mountains, behind steel doors and security checkpoints, Admiral Walker and Captain Miller followed Dr. Emily Ross through dimly lit tunnels. The facility's existence was known to only a handful of people on Earth. 20 years ago, Dr. Ross explained as they walked, we detected something strange in our particle accelerator experiments. A new type of energy that didn't match anything we knew about. They reached a massive circular door marked Project Apollo. Dr. Ross pressed her hand against a scanner, and the door slowly opened with a heavy hiss. What we found, she continued, wasn't just new energy. It was dark matter, and we learned how to control it. The room beyond was enormous, carved straight into the mountain. In its center floated a sphere of pure darkness, about the size of a beach ball. It hung in the air, surrounded by humming machines and glowing energy fields. Dark matter? Miller asked, staring at the sphere. But that's just theoretical physics, isn't it? Ross smiled. That's what we wanted everyone to think. Even the Empire believes humans are decades away from understanding dark matter. But we didn't just understand it, we mastered it. She touched a control panel, and the sphere expanded slightly. The air around it seemed to bend, and Miller felt a strange pressure in his ears. This is why they're being so careful, Walker said, understanding dawning on his face. Their scans must have detected traces of this technology. Exactly, Ross nodded. We've kept it hidden, working in secret. The sphere you're looking at contains enough energy to power all of North America for a year. But that's not why it's important. She led them to another room, smaller but filled with screens and complex diagrams. Dark matter doesn't just provide energy. It can bend space itself. And if you can bend space, you can control gravity, Miller finished, his eyes widening. That's how their ships move so fast. Yes, the Empire's entire technology is based on dark matter manipulation. They've probably been using it for thousands of years. Ross brought up a simulation on the main screen. But we did something different, something they never thought of. The simulation showed a small device, hardly bigger than a laptop. We didn't try to copy their technology. We approached it from a completely different direction. Instead of using dark matter for power or propulsion, we learned to disrupt it. Walker leaned forward, studying the device. What exactly does that mean? It means, Ross said quietly, that we can shut down their ships. All of them. At once. Their weapons, their shields, their engines, everything they have runs on dark matter. And we can turn it off like a light switch. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Empire's overwhelming technological advantage wasn't as overwhelming as they thought. Why haven't we used it already? Miller asked. Because we only have one shot, Ross explained. The moment we use it, every advanced civilization in the galaxy will know what we can do. And we don't know how many of them are out there. Walker paced the room, thinking hard. So we have a weapon that could defeat the entire Imperial fleet. But using it would paint an even bigger target on Earth. Exactly, Ross said. Once they know we can neutralize dark matter technology, we become the biggest threat in the galaxy. Every civilization that depends on it would see us as a danger. Miller looked at the floating sphere of darkness. Then we need something else. Not a weapon, but a warning. Something to make them think twice without revealing our full capabilities. Walker nodded slowly. Dr. Ross, how fast can you put together a demonstration? Something small enough to prove what we can do, but not enough to show our full hand. Ross smiled. Give me 12 hours. I'll show you exactly what humanity can do. As they left the facility, Miller looked at his watch. 36 hours remained until the Empire's deadline. They had one chance to get this right. With 24 hours left until the Empire's deadline, Dr. Ross's team worked frantically in the mountain facility. They had constructed a small device, about the size of a kitchen microwave, covered in blinking lights and humming with power. It's ready, Ross announced, her eyes tired but proud. We'll only affect one small area of space, just enough to prove what we can do. Admiral Walker nodded, looking at the device. And you're sure this won't reveal too much? We've designed it carefully, Ross explained. It will look like we're just starting to understand dark matter technology. They'll see us as an emerging threat, not a complete one. In the control room above, Captain Miller coordinated with space stations worldwide. They needed everything perfectly timed. One mistake could reveal too much or too little. All stations report ready, Miller announced. The Imperial ships haven't moved from their positions. Walker picked up the secure phone to the UN Council. We're ready to proceed. Send the message. The transmission went out on all frequencies, aimed at the Imperial fleet. Dr. Ross had helped write it, making sure every word carried the right meaning. To Commander Rex and the Imperial fleet, the message began. Earth has considered your offer. Before we give our answer, we wish to demonstrate something. Please observe the area near your smallest scout ship. In space, the Imperial ships remained motionless. Then Ross activated her device. A small sphere of distortion appeared near one of the Imperial scout ships. Inside that sphere, all dark matter energy simply stopped working. The scout ship's engines flickered and died. Its hull turned completely dark as its power systems failed. The effect lasted exactly 10 seconds. Then Ross turned off the device, and everything returned to normal. The scout ship's systems came back online immediately. Signal going out from the Imperial flagship, Miller reported. They're requesting immediate communication. Commander Rex's face appeared on the main screen. His usual calm expression was gone, replaced by barely controlled worry. What did you just do? Walker stepped forward. We've been studying dark matter, Commander. As you can see, we're making progress. This was just a small demonstration. Impossible, Rex said. Your civilization is too young. You can't have this technology. Ross joined Walker in front of the screen. Commander, we'd like to show you something else. She pressed a button, and a new transmission began. The transmission showed Earth's history, but not the usual peaceful documentaries. This was different. It showed humanity's wars, their battles, their constant drive to innovate during conflict. It showed how humans had gone from basic flight to space travel in just 60 years, how they had split the atom and harnessed its power in less than a decade. We advance fastest when challenged, Walker explained. Every time humanity has faced an obstacle, we've overcome it, usually in ways our opponents never expected. The transmission continued, showing more recent achievements. The first moon base, the Mars colony, the deep space probes, all accomplished in just a few decades. Now, Walker continued, imagine what we might achieve if you force us into a war. How quickly do you think we'd advance then? What other surprises might we develop? Rex was silent for a long moment. The entire control room held its breath. You're threatening the Empire? Rex asked finally. No, Walker replied calmly. We're offering a choice. You can have Earth as an enemy, watching us advance faster and faster as we fight you. Or you can have us as allies, working together to build something better. Miller watched the screen carefully. He could see other Imperial officers in the background, talking urgently among themselves. You have 12 hours remaining in your deadline, Commander, Walker finished. We suggest you consider your options carefully. As the transmission ended, Ross looked at her device. Do you think they understood the message? Walker smiled slightly. They understood. Now we wait to see if they're wise enough to listen. The longest 12 hours in Earth's history had begun. Commander Rex stood in the command center of the Imperial flagship, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath them. His advisors had been arguing for hours since the humans' demonstration. It's impossible. Science Master Paul insisted, his gray skin almost white with stress. No civilization develops dark matter control this quickly. It took us thousands of years. But they did it. Military advisor John countered, pointing at the data screens. And they did it differently. Our sensors show their method is completely unlike ours. We don't even understand how they're doing it. Rex studied the replay of the demonstration again. The small scout ship systems had shut down completely, but so cleanly, so precisely. It wasn't just raw power, it was elegant engineering. "Show me their history again," he ordered. The main screen lit up with images from Earth's transmission. Rex watched carefully as humans went from horse-drawn carriages to supersonic aircraft in less than 2 centuries. From simple radio to quantum communications in just a few generations. "Look at their pattern," he said quietly. His advisors fell silent. Every time they face a challenge, they don't just overcome it, they leap far beyond it. He brought up more recent data. "When we first detected their nuclear tests, our analysts said they were centuries away from spaceflight. Less than 30 years later, they walked on their moon." "But they're still primitive compared to us," Paul argued. "Their ships can barely reach their own solar system. Are they?" Rex turned to face his advisors. "Or are they developing along a completely different path? Look at their dark matter device. They didn't copy our technology. They created something entirely new." John stepped forward, pulling up military simulations. "Our predictive models are troubling, Commander. If we force a war, there's an 82% chance they'll develop countermeasures to our technology within the first year. Within 5 years." He paused. "The models suggest they could match or exceed our capabilities." "That's absurd," Paul exclaimed. "We've ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years." "Exactly," Rex said softly. "When was the last time we truly innovated? When did we last create something completely new?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. The Empire had been stable, unchanging, for millennia. They perfected their existing technology, but rarely developed anything truly new. Their warning wasn't just about their dark matter device, Rex continued. It was about their potential, their drive to advance. He looked at Earth again. "In all our history, have we ever encountered a species that advanced so quickly under pressure?" "Never," John admitted. "Most species either submit to the Empire or fight, and lose quickly. Humans." He studied the data. Humans seem to thrive on challenges. Rex walked to the main window, watching the dark matter demonstration replay one more time. "We designed our ultimatum assuming they would react like every other species, with either submission or futile resistance. Instead, they showed us just enough to make us stop and think." "Clever," John nodded. "They're not just showing us their technology, they're showing us how they think." A junior officer rushed into the room. "Commander, we're detecting unusual energy readings from their lunar base. They're testing something new already." Rex smiled slightly. "Of course they are. They know we're watching, so they're letting us see their progress." He turned to his advisors. "They're not afraid of showing us their advances because they know they can develop new ones faster than we can respond." "What are your orders, Commander?" John asked. Rex looked at the countdown timer. 6 hours remained until their deadline. "Prepare my shuttle," he ordered. "I need to speak with their leaders again. And this time," he added, looking at the growing energy readings from the moon, "I think we should listen very carefully to what they have to say." The Empire had ruled the galaxy through superior technology and unwavering strength. But now, for the first time in 10,000 years, they faced something they'd never encountered before. A young species that saw their ultimatum not as a threat, but as a challenge to overcome. The International Space Station had been quickly modified for this second meeting. The usual laboratory equipment was moved aside to make room for a large conference table. Admiral Walker, Captain Miller, and Dr. Ross sat on one side, facing Commander Rex and his 2 advisors across the table. The space station's lights reflected off Rex's pale blue skin as he spoke first. "Your demonstration was impressive, but that's not why I'm here." "Oh." Walker kept his expression neutral. "Why are you here, Commander?" Rex placed a small device on the table. It projected a series of images, different alien civilizations, all part of the Empire. "In 10,000 years, we've conquered hundreds of species. Some fought, some surrendered, but none of them did what you did." "And what exactly did we do?" Ross asked, genuinely curious. "You surprised us," Rex admitted. "Not just with your technology, but with your approach. He gestured to his science master Paul. Show them. Paul activated another device, displaying complex graphs and calculations. These are our standard conquest predictions. They show how long it takes a species to advance, adapt, and potentially threaten the Empire. The graphs shifted, showing Earth's pattern. It was drastically different. A sharp, almost vertical line of advancement. Most species advance in a straight line, Rex explained. Steady, predictable progress. But humans, he pointed to Earth's graph, you advance exponentially, and you advance fastest when threatened. Miller leaned forward. Is that why your ship stayed so far from our defense platforms? You were worried about pushing us too hard. Yes, John, the military advisor admitted. Our models showed that destroying your defenses might accelerate your development even faster, like your Second World War, where you went from basic flight to jet engines in just 6 years. Walker noticed something in Rex's expression. There's more, isn't there? Rex nodded slowly. We've detected unusual energy readings from your lunar base. New experiments with dark matter started just hours after our first meeting. You're already building on what you learned, aren't you? Ross smiled slightly. We never stop learning, Commander. It's what humans do. Exactly, Rex said. And that's why I'm here. The Empire has survived for 10,000 years by being the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. But you, he looked at each human in turn. You could match our technology in years, not centuries, and then surpass it. So what are you suggesting? Walker asked. Rex straightened in his chair. I'm suggesting something the Empire has never done before. Instead of conquering Earth, we offer an alliance. The room fell silent. Even Rex's advisors looked surprised. An alliance? Miller asked. Just like that. Not just like that, Rex corrected. We have conditions, knowledge exchanges, trade agreements, defensive pacts. But Earth would remain independent, free to develop in its own way. And what does the Empire gain from this? Walker asked carefully. An ally that thinks differently, Rex replied. Your approach to dark matter showed us that. You see solutions we would never imagine. Together, we could advance faster than either of us could alone. Ross looked at the energy readings from the lunar base. And if we refuse, then we withdraw, Rex said simply, because starting a war with Earth would be, he smiled slightly, illogical. Walker shared a look with his colleagues. This was more than they'd hoped for, but they needed to be certain. We'll need time to discuss this with Earth's leaders, Walker said. Of course, Rex agreed. But first, I have one question. He turned to Ross. That demonstration with our scout ship, that wasn't your full capability, was it? Ross met his gaze steadily. Commander, one thing you should learn about humans, we always hold something in reserve. Rex laughed, a surprisingly warm sound. I believe this alliance will be very interesting indeed. 5 years after the historic alliance between Earth and the Empire, the galaxy had changed in ways no one expected. Captain Miller, now Admiral Miller, stood on the observation deck of humanity's first deep space station, watching ships from a dozen worlds move through space. Still hard to believe sometimes, isn't it? Dr. Ross joined him at the window. She pointed to a new ship design moving past them. A smooth combination of Imperial and human engineering. That's the first joint project, Imperial Power Systems with human innovation. How's it performing? Miller asked, though he'd already heard rumors. Ross smiled. Twice as efficient as traditional Imperial ships. Commander Rex was right. We do think differently. The station's alert system chimed softly. Priority message from Earth Defense Command, the computer announced. Unknown vessels detected at the edge of controlled space. Miller and Ross hurried to the command center. Walker, now Earth's Supreme Commander, was already on the main screen. We've got trouble, Walker announced. A new species entered Imperial space. They're not responding to communications, and they're destroying everything in their path. The Empire has requested our help. The screen showed massive organic-looking ships, unlike anything they'd seen before. They moved through space like giant sea creatures, consuming everything in their path. The Empire's weapons aren't working, Walker continued. Their dark matter technology has no effect. They're calling them the Devourers. Because they're not using any technology we understand, Ross realized, studying the readings. They're pure biological entities. Dark matter doesn't affect them the same way. Miller watched as an Imperial battle fleet engaged the Devourers. The Imperial ship's weapons barely scratched the organic hulls. 3 Imperial worlds had already fallen. The Empires ruled space so long, they don't know how to fight something completely different, Miller said. But we do. Humanity's been imagining fights with alien creatures since before we had electricity. Ross was already working at her console. I'm sending data to the lunar labs. We need to think like humans, forget about advanced technology, and go back to basics. Within hours, Earth's response began. While Imperial ships fought defensive battles, human scientists worked on a solution. They didn't try to match the Devourers' power. Instead, they looked for weaknesses. They're biological, Ross explained to a joint Earth Imperial Council. That means they follow biological rules. They need to eat. They need to breathe. They need to maintain their internal balance. 2 weeks later, the first human countermeasure was ready. Small probes, carrying a specially engineered virus, were launched toward the Devourer fleet. The virus wouldn't harm any known species. It was designed specifically for the Devourer's unique biology. Commander Rex, watching from his flagship, saw the results firsthand. The mighty Devourer ships began to slow, their organic hulls turning brittle and weak. Imperial weapons that had been useless now shattered them easily. Remarkable, Rex said, standing on the station with Miller and Ross after the battle. You didn't try to overpower them. You didn't invent new technology. You just used simple biology. Sometimes the old solutions are the best ones, Miller replied. Humanity learned that a long time ago. Ross looked out at the ships moving past the station, Imperial, human, and now new designs that combine both civilizations' knowledge. The galaxy's changing, she said. The Empire's learning to innovate again, and we're learning from their experience. And the next threat? Rex asked. There will be others. Miller smiled. Then we'll face them together. The Empire brings 10,000 years of knowledge, and humanity brings our own special talent. Which is? Rex asked, though he already knew the answer. Finding new ways to solve old problems, Ross said. And never, ever giving up. As they watched the ships pass by, Miller thought back to that first warning Earth had given the Empire. They had shown just enough of their potential to avoid a war. Now that potential was helping to build something greater than either civilization could have achieved alone. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what both humanity and the Empire needed.